promoting and supporting some of the cornerstones of the American experience. It's all about family, faith, and freedom. Now let's get back to the Curtis Report with your host, Barry Curtis.
Welcome back to the Curtis Report. We appreciate you being here. As always, folks, we appreciate you, Facebook folks. Thousands of folks like us on the Facebook page, Curtis Report on Facebook. Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you for wearing the t-shirts. Some of these t-shirts popped back up on Facebook the other day. We haven't had t-shirts in a while, but I know some of you all have been wearing them to some of the political events, primary political events that have been going on. Really cool. Thank you. They've been popping back up. We have some more t-shirts coming at some point of our life this year. Also, we appreciate the Son of Man Bible Study Group also on Facebook. Thousands upon thousands of you in there. Appreciate that. We talk about family, faith, and freedom here, as you know, on the show. I appreciate your participation in the prayers and the blessings as it relates to that page as well. As always, you can follow along with us on our website, thecurtisreport.com or thecurtisinitiative.com. Take it to the same place because a lot of you have questions about guests on the show. So there's usually a bio on our website and a photo and bio or a description of whatever's going on there, event, individual. If an individual selling a book, you'll find that information on there. Usually there's a link to their site or Amazon or whatever so you can purchase that book. We appreciate you jumping on site, seeing what that's all about. A number of hits a day, a couple thousand hits a day. So we know you're listening. We know you're out there. We know you're doing it. So we appreciate that. So thecurtisreport.com, curtisinitiative.com, take you to that same place there. Lots of stuff going on in the news. It is it is political season here. I don't know how many people are going to end up on this Republican side against Hillary and now Bernie Sanders, the socialist, has also jumped in the race. But it's really interesting. I think we got 4 or 5 now who have jumped in, including Ben Carson now. Of course, we got Marco Rubio. Ted Cruz is in the thing. We have the former governor of Arkansas. He jumped in yesterday. So some of the stuff going on. And we'll get to a lot of that stuff later on the show or future shows going on. Coming up here shortly. I don't want to take up too much more time, but I want to get this guest on the show here. And this is really interesting. And we often have authors on the show and different guests on the show who have written books. I have found that this particular author, this particular book has really resonated with me. And we appreciate his first time being on the show. And we want to welcome, we appreciate him being here. John Whiteside, welcome to the Curtis Report.
Thanks, Barry. It's great to be with you.
Appreciate you being here. Tell us just briefly, before we get into the book that you wrote, Fool's Made, a true story of the espionage there in the National Security Agency. Tell us a little bit about you. Give us your background.
Well, I graduated from Temple University as a physical education major, actually. But I've been a policeman in the summer times in a little New Jersey seashore town called Stone Harbor, New Jersey. And I just had a love for law enforcement. I applied to the FBI and got in 1971. I served in 3 different field offices and 3 different resident agencies during my career, as well as a stint at FBI headquarters. I finished my career in the Philadelphia division, and that's where I was in 1992 when I first got word of this particular espionage case.
Well, appreciate you being here. Tell me, what was the catalyst for this book, Fool's Made? What was the reason you wrote the book?
Actually, I had 3 reasons, Barry. The first and the main one was I've read a lot of other espionage stories, and this kind of case was lost. No one wrote about it, and since I was the case agent and knew it better than anyone else, I just felt that it was a tale that should be told, so the American public could see just what the FBI is willing to do to catch the bad guys who are out there. Absolutely.
There's lots of stories. We often have a guest on the show, an old friend of ours, used to be number 2 in the FBI, Buck Revelle, a friend of mine who's often on the show. And he can tell you different stories about this and that. But what piqued your interest in this one? I mean, I'm sure you got a lot of stories. What about this one was so important that we should know about?
Well, in my opinion, it's a case that lasted 32 years from the time the subject of the story, Robert Lipka, walked into the Soviet embassy and passed National Security Agency top-secret documents until the day he was sentenced in court. 32 years. It's actually the longest-running espionage case ever prosecuted in U.S. courts.
Unbelievable. Let's set this stage here. Tell us about this Robert Lipka. He seems like an odd individual, and from my readings here, it tells me that he sold U.S. secrets to the Russians and only asked for $400. Tell me, set this up for this guy. Who is this guy? What's he all about?
Well, he was born as a baby boomer in 1945. He was born in Niagara Falls, New York. He lived with the family. He was the second of 4 children, for those that are into birth order. His parents separated when he was a teenager, and he moved with his father to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and attended the Cumberland Valley High School there. After school, apparently he failed English, so he joined the Army in 1963, went to Fort Dix for basic training, did well on his test, and then was assigned to Fort Holabird, which was then the Army Intelligence School, located close to Fort Meade in Maryland. After his training there in December of 1963, he was posted to the National Security Agency in kind of a clerical role. But in that clerical role, he had access to every incoming NSA document and every outgoing NSA document produced by the agency, as well as other documents from the Department of Defense, from the State Department, from CIA, from other intelligence services. And his job was simply to clear teleprinters and take the cleared message traffic and pigeonhole it to whoever was supposed to receive the information. What he did was, when for some reasons unknown, other than pure green greed, he decided to walk into the Soviet embassy in September of 1965 and pass his documents. And originally, all he asked for was $400. However, the Soviets then set up a series of meets where every 2 weeks he would go to a pre-arranged location, leave his classified documents, go to a secondary location, and pick up his money, which was $500 every 2 weeks. So he was actually making $1,000 a month, which was 5 times his monthly salary.
So it was economic gain. So it certainly wasn't ideology, or both.
It was not ideology, as he said so clearly. It was pure green greed.
Set this up and continue with this. Apparently, he continued, and this was a good arrangement for the Russians, obviously, for the Soviet Union. So, but at some point, as his enlistment ended, he wanted out of the deal.
Well, as his enlisted ended in August of 1967, he knew he would no longer have access to the documents. And when he had his last meeting with his KGB handlers, we believe that he told them that he had been working for American intelligence all along, so that they would actually leave him alone in his own mind. That was kind of a deception that these people, these KGB officers, knew. And they actually dispatched 2 KGB illegals who were living in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, to Moscow to brief them on the Lipka case and direct them to go back and recontact Lipka after he was out of the service for a meeting. And that was done, and that was actually a conspiracy. Those 2 illegals going to New York City, getting instructions to go see Robert Lipka, leave a postcard in his mailbox, telling him to make some recontacts with the Soviet handlers.
Now, what time was this? What time period was this?
This was in April of 1968.
Okay, so in the midst of the Cold War.
In the heart of the Cold War, absolutely.
Yeah. So as we continue, at what point, what happened when they contacted him? What was his reaction? What was the purpose of the contact by the Russians? I mean, he no longer had access to this.
No, he no longer had access, but they left the postcard in his mailbox with some kind of signal. And he brought that postcard in the house, waved it around in front of his wife, and said, "They've contacted me. We're back in it." They waved it around in the air, and she said, "We're out. Stay out." And he said, "I've got to keep my options open." So he did go on and make the meeting with the KGB, and apparently wasn't happy. It sounded to me like they probably read him the riot act and said, we know, don't play games with us. We know the value of the information you pass to us. We would like you to go back someday to NSA. So get your degree, and we'll see what we can do.
So this was a long-term planned out plot by the Soviet Union to get them all back in the NSA.
Sure. I mean, they had a guy they ran successfully for 2 years without any detection. They'd love to have him go back.
Absolutely. So again, on Lipka's part, was it again greed? It certainly wasn't ideology.
No, it was strictly greed if he was going to go back. But he never did go back. But what I think he did, and we have some evidence that he was paid not only $27,000, as one of our sources originally told us,
right,
but perhaps paid up to $150,000. And what I suspect is that during the time he was in college in Milledgeville, Pennsylvania, he was making some contact with his KGB handlers, indicating that when he got out of college, he would go back to NSA, telling them he needed money, and perhaps they paid him all along, hoping that he, in fact, would go back.
Hey, man. Hold on just a second here. We're going to take a quick break. This is fascinating. And we're going to get into the kind of the second shoe is going to drop here on a Soviet defector. We're going to be right back with more of the Curtis Report in just a moment.